Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Lawcast. This time, we're going back to cover a show that I'm really excited about. It's a show Cush and I have been talking about covering for literally years. It's the night of Eddie Guerrero's Ultimate Triumph, No Way Out 2004, an unforgettable night in the history of professional wrestling.
I got to tell you, we don't normally assign homework, or we don't normally go into these shows with like any sort of stated goal beyond just covering the show and talking about it. But if we leave this show without making you immediately close out of this browser tab and go over and open up one to YouTube to watch the end of Eddie Guerrero versus Brock Lesnar, we have failed in our job, and we apologize if we don't succeed in that goal.
Yeah. I mean, in addition to covering this show and the match, I really kind of want to cover the broad strokes of Eddie Guerrero's career and his full story, because I don't know when else we would do it, and this is just the perfect occasion for it.
Absolutely. Like, this whole thing is just a celebration of Eddie Guerrero and how great he is. Along the way, there's a whole bunch of other stuff like tangential to that to talk about, especially the shithole that the SmackDown is at this point.
Yeah. It's not great. Not good times for SmackDown. And believe it or not, they'll get much worse. If you want to listen to how bad things would get, you can listen to our Judgment Day 2004 episode in the archives, which is just a show that drove us to madness, as I remember.
It's one of the greatest bad wrestling shows ever produced. Like, I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, I think I pretty much cracked when I was explaining who Hirohito was. But this is happier times because at least we have the glory of Eddie Guerrero winning the WWE title on this night.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, for the broad strokes of Eddie's story, he grows up in a wrestling family in El Paso. He breaks into the business in his late teens in Mexico. He's the son of Mexican wrestling legend Gory Guerrero, one of the greats of all time. He gets crazy over as a heel in Mexico, as part of a tag team with Love Machine, Art Barr. If you've never seen the When Worlds Collide AAA pay-per-view, can't recommend it enough. And him and Barr have an incredible, 2 out of 3 falls, hair versus hair match on that show.
Absolutely. And like, literally, they're maybe the greatest heel tag team of all time. And it's not because of Eddie. Like, Eddie's just a baby at this point.
Yeah. What the hell was their team name? I'm blanking on it.
It was Los Parejas de Terror, and then they had changed it for that.
They're the Gringos Locos at that point?
Yeah, Gringos Locos, yeah.
Yeah, like two incredibly hateable people. Art Barr had an incredible amount of talent. Definitely would have been signed by one of the major 2 companies if not for the fact that he had a statutory rape conviction in his background.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. It's just such an amazing tag team. Like, Eddie Guerrero didn't get as much time in like AAA and stuff like that as a lot of the other really famous Mexican wrestlers did, because he was basically snapped up by New Japan, snapped up by American Wrestling. Like, people couldn't sign Eddie fast enough all through the beginning of his career.
And also the Mexican economy collapsed, and the value of the peso went down massively, which meant the pay in Mexico was no longer competitive, which helps contribute to the mass exodus of talent from Mexico in
ironically, that's
1995.
That sets up a Mexican environment which allows Chris Jericho to go down there and be successful, because there are no top stars. So arguably there would be no Chris Jericho as we know it today unless all of that had happened.
It's funny the way the number of breaks you sometimes need to make things work.
Yeah.
So Eddie goes to ECW in 1995. He has an awesome series of matches with Dean Malenko there. If you've never seen those, go check those out. At least one of them is on WWE Network.
And those are phenomenal. Like, completely unlike anything ECW or anybody was putting on television at the time.
Yeah. Towards the end of the year, he goes to WCW. We've covered some of his early WCW run. It was an awkward fit. He just didn't really have – they were trying to make him like a white meat baby face, and he wasn't really equipped to play that character at that point.
No. And in fact, I would even say that like Eddie Guerrero is one of the most natural heels in wrestling history, which is ironic because he'll wind up becoming one of the most beloved baby faces in wrestling history. But it's sort of like the Ric Flair thing, where like he's such a great heel that eventually you come to love him. And those are like the greatest baby faces where like you learn to love the person. And like all through the beginning of his career, though, every time they try to make him babyface, it's a miserable disaster.
Yeah, he got over in WCW when they turned him heel in 1997. We've covered that incredible match him and Rey Mysterio had at the 1997 Halloween Havoc. It's just one of my favorite matches of all time, and just amazing work from both guys in that match.
Absolutely. Like, genuinely, it may have been one of the most influential matches in wrestling history, because it's one of the ones that, like, everyone who created the cruiserweight style that became so prevalent in the thousands, they all point back to that one. Like, that's what made me want to do it. That's what made me want to do it.
That was just a perfect cruiserweight match with all the high flying action and the high spots, but also great selling and, you know, a roller coaster pace and psychology and heat and everything you could want out of a wrestling match.
Yeah, it's a match so good that it made WCW take the two of those people seriously, which God knows is not something they wanted to do.
Yeah. He got some pushes in WCW, but it was always stop and start, and, you know, substance abuse was as much to blame as anything else there. He was drinking a lot. He was starting to pop pain pills, just was not reliable.
Yeah, this begins a string of problems for Eddie that's going to basically derail his entire career, to the point where I don't think anybody realistically thought that he was going to have a career into the thousands. But what do you think happens for Eddie if, let's just say, like, the drug abuse and all of that doesn't derail it, the car accident never happens? Do you think that he gets any success in WCW? You think he stays the whole time?
There was such a glass ceiling there. It was just really hard for anybody to move up at that point. And by the time, I think they finally would have pushed him in like 99, 2000 when the ship was sinking.
Right.
But by then, the hell's the point of getting a push there? The company's falling apart.
We would have gotten some great Eddie versus Booker matches, though.
Yeah. He left WCW in early 2000 along with Chris Benoit, Saturn, and Dean Malenko, the Radicals. They all quit together when Kevin Sullivan was made head booker. We're going to have to cover that Sold Out 2000 show sometime where Benoit wins the belt and then quits the next day.
Yeah, and what happens to be an incredibly awesome match between him and Sid that's completely forgotten.
Yeah. Just an insane situation. Everything about that show was crazy. But yeah, so those four guys all quit. You know, one of the last death blows to WCW is they lost all their mid-card workhorses at once.
Yep.
They show up in the WWF a few weeks later. They get a huge pop when they debut. Loved that moment. They looked like superstars right there. And then things take kind of a left turn as Eddie breaks his arm in their very first match when he kind of botches the landing on a frog splash, and he's out for a little while. And then they get turned heel and they kind of get jobbed out. And, you know, the big push it looked like they were going to get does not materialize right away.
Yeah. And I mean, we've spoken before about, we commiserate often about the major disappointments in wrestling history that always reverberate for us. And the Radicals is definitely one of them, right? Like, it's such an opportunity.
But it was also kind of a bad time for them to debut because it was right on the way into WrestleMania and there was a lot going on. If they had instead showed up after WrestleMania, then there's space for them to get pushed all the way.
That's a good point. And, like, there's just so many huge stars at this point. Like, there's no way four guys are breaking through at the same time.
Yeah, it's tough when you've got Triple H, Rock, Foley, Undertaker, Kane, Big Show, Jericho. I mean, a lot of guys in the queue ahead of them. Angle's on his way up at that point.
Right.
They just brought in Taz. Like, they were really loaded. Eddie gets over as a heel. He wins the European title a couple times. His drinking really gets out of control, and the WWE sends him to rehab in like the middle of 2001. While he's recovering, while he's gone in recovery, he gets really drunk one night, drives himself home, tries to get into his gated neighborhood, can't remember the code for the gate, ends up smashing his car into the gate to try to get it open. Cops eventually get called. They show up and arrest him. This, obviously ends up in the media, and he gets fired. This is pretty much rock bottom for him.
Yep. And to be honest, like this is such a, at this point, there's really nowhere else to go. Like ACW and WCW are pretty much done.
Yeah.
I mean, he can go back to New Japan, but like his life is in such tatters that like he basically just leaves the wrestling industry. Like we don't think we're ever going to see Eddie again. Like this is,
I thought it was over.
He's got to go deal with demons. We think it's just, we've seen that in stories so many times before, right? Like people with bad addiction problems start to hit rock bottom. Then they leave the industry. Then you don't hear about them for a couple of years. And then they're just dead on the news, right?
Yeah. I thought he was headed in the Jake Roberts direction at this point.
Absolutely. You just see him like drunk and washed up on the indie scene 10 years from then. It was a tragic thing. It really was.
But miraculously, he turns things around. He quit. He wakes up in prison the next day, and says, "This is it. Like I'm done. I'm changing things." He stops drinking. He finds religion. He gets back together with his wife, and a year after that, he's brought back to WWE. Right after they split up the rosters, he's put on Raw. He wins the Intercontinental title from Rob Van Dam. Like just a remarkable turnaround in the space of a year.
Yeah. The funniest thing is I remember watching his first match back is I believe, I don't remember if that one was the one in Puerto Rico, but like right after that, he comes to Ring of Honor. He's on like their third show ever. And the only reason I ever found out what Ring of Honor was is because I was hunting through DVDs at an FYE and it's like Eddie Guerrero on an indie show. I better watch this. Yeah. And that's how I got introduced to Ring of Honor.
Yeah, and he had a few more indie shots left after he signed back with WWE.
Yeah.
As I remember, I think he had an amazing triple threat match, didn't he?
Yeah, with Punk and Mysterio.
Yes, that's it.
Yep, I think that was one I think was in Puerto Rico. Or no, that was for IWA.
Yeah, that was IWA.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, he wins the IC title from Van Dam. He ends up getting moved over to SmackDown when they kind of reshuffle the rosters a couple months into the split. It looks like he's going to get a feud with Austin. Seems like Austin probably requested to work with him, but in a really bad break, Austin ends up walking out because he didn't want to do the Lesnar match right after that. And Eddie misses out on what would have been his big break. Him and Austin, I think, would have been awesome together.
Can you imagine Chicken Shit Eddie versus Austin?
Yes. That would have been money.
And like you get the feeling that Austin just really wanted like a worker to work with.
Yeah. Especially I think he wanted to give something back to really try to make a new guy. That was going to be his Brett and Austin feud. He was going to put Eddie over.
I've heard him like mention many times since that he always kind of regrets that he never really got the chance to make a guy.
Yeah.
Like he made Rock. I mean, you can probably say that, but like he never really got in the twilight of his career, he never really got the chance to just like take a guy and put him over.
Yeah, and that's just one of those that life's not fair. Imagine we could have had 3 or 4 more years of Austin, like making the next round of top stars.
And he so badly wanted to do it. Like he wanted to do it the right way, and it was stolen from him.
He's a traditionalist. He was going to give back to wrestling.
Son of a bitch.
I know. Austin versus Lesnar, Austin versus Cena, Austin versus Orton, Austin versus Batista.
Yeah, let's be clear. We would have gotten Austin versus Orton. That would have happened. Yeah. If he had been around for just like another year.
Oh, but yeah. So instead, Eddie ends up getting moved to SmackDown. They put him in a tag team with Chavo, and this just takes off. Like for me, this is really what turned him into a star. It was him and Chavo together in Los Guerreros.
Yeah, it's easy to kind of like revisionist history your way back and like be like, we always loved Eddie. Eddie was the greatest. We all kind of acknowledge as an internet wrestling community that Eddie Guerrero was one of the best wrestlers in the world, but like he wasn't a star. Like people didn't know who Eddie Guerrero was really. He'd just been a mid-card heel his whole life. He had never really gotten that big push. Probably the biggest match in terms of importance of his career up to this point was the one he had with Flair that sucked at that Road Wild.
The lie, cheat, and steal gimmick just caught fire.
Yes.
We have the brilliant booking of SmackDown under Paul Heyman at this point. He's part of the famous SmackDown 6. Him and Chavo, Angle and Benoit, and Edge and Mysterio. And just every week we're getting combinations of those 6 guys wrestling each other.
And these are some of the last great skits that WWE does too. Like they start doing like the skits to hype up Los Guerreros where they're like stealing from people and they're like robbing them. Like the one where they pretend to be pool guys and they just rob this rich white dude's house.
That's my favorite one.
It's so good.
Yeah. And like, is this gimmick racially questionable? Sure. But like, it was harmless.
And it's done with such a wink and it's done by them that like the Hispanic community winds up embracing it completely.
Yeah, I mean, sure, they're being criminals, but like they're not dangerous. They're not really hurting anybody. They're just ripping off stupid people.
Yeah, they're just like, fuck it, we lie, we cheat, we steal, but it's great. Like we have fun and it's all like listen, it's just something that reverberates with people immediately.
Yeah, it was a I mean, his WCW gimmick was cheat to win. This is, a redo of it, but absolutely brilliant stuff. And yeah, the good point that that's like one of the last time they did those really good introductory video packages.
Yeah, this and like Carlito are like the last ones I remember.
Yeah, that definitely seems like the Bruce Pritchard influence on SmackDown.
But I mean, like it's so beneficial because by the time they come out, you like already love these two characters.
Eddie became the first WWE United States champion at Vengeance 2003 when he beat Chris Benoit in a tournament final. Had some really awesome matches against Edge that summer and fall. I remember just a classic no DQ match they had on SmackDown. That was one of the best matches of the year.
You could sometimes when I can't sleep and I just need to watch some wrestling, like I'll just turn on like 2002, 2003 SmackDown, just turn it on, watch random matches, because just any match you see between these guys is magic.
Eddie loses the U.S. belt to Big Show in the fall, but before that, he's actually got the honor of being a double champion as Los Guerreros win the tag titles. At this point, it's really starting to become clear, like he's headed for the main event. This was when I was starting to feel like he was going to become a top guy.
Oh, God, yeah. And, like, the fans are, like, losing their shit. But, like, amusingly, it's always kind of important to point out, like, they don't really care about Chavo.
No.
Like, whenever Chavo's by himself, he gets no reaction whatsoever. It's all so focused on Eddie. Because around this time, like, he's always been a hugely charismatic guy. Like, when he's doing, like, the heel stuff with China or even, like, the heel stuff in WCW, like, he's got tons of charisma. But now it's just pouring out in waves. And he just seems so happy. And he's doing the stuff with the lowriders and he's bouncing around and coming out. And, like, genuinely, I've never seen a more lovable wrestling character than this one ever in my life.
Just kind of the playful shit-eating grin as he would pull one over on his opponent.
Yes.
And the fun, creative ways they would find for him to cheat to win his matches.
Like, I vividly remember the first time I ever saw him do the thing where, like, he takes the belt and he looks at the referee and he, like, tosses it to the other guy and falls down.
Goes down. Yeah.
And just, like, laughing hysterically as, like, he gets awarded the match.
How appropriate is it that his last televised match, he beat Mr. Kennedy by DQ when he hit the mat with a chair behind the referee's back and then threw the chair to Kennedy and collapsed?
I feel like that's literally the perfect way for his last match to go.
Couldn't have been any better any other way.
Oh my God. But like he was just such a master of stuff like that, of just like little facial expressions and like looking at the crowd with a smirk and then they'd explode. And like it's the subtle things that you can't teach people that like so many wrestlers will just never take it to that next level. And he had it, man.
He never really gets a proper like face turn. It's just kind of like the crowd loves him so much there was no point in continuing to make him a heel.
It's more like they just turned Chavo against him to make it official.
In particular, there's a SmackDown in El Paso sometime in the fall of 2003 where he just gets a thunderous pop when he comes out, like biggest pop of the night by far. And at that point, yeah, it's clear they've got a baby face.
This is the first time since maybe Austin, and I'm not trying to like overstate it by saying that it's the same because it's not, but this is the first time since around that time that I remember fans really pointing out one guy and like losing their shit for that guy. You know what I mean? Just like just sort of like a wellspring of support for someone out of nowhere.
Well, and this is also around the time it starts becoming noticeable that he's really moving the ratings. Like he is really popping ratings on SmackDown. for his segments.
Yeah. And like we've talked before about how Vince has often chased the audience of different countries. So like the Chinese audience and the Indian audience and the Mexican audience without a lot of success. Like it's very, very difficult to do that. And arguably the only time they've ever been successful is here. Eddie Guerrero drew the Hispanic audience measurably more than any other wrestler who has ever lived.
Yeah, SmackDown had a huge Hispanic audience. And this is, I think, part of why he had to stay on SmackDown was the cable, penetration into the Hispanic culture at that point was just not very large.
Yeah. And but for whatever reason, even they tried this later with Ray to see if it would rub off on Ray, and it didn't. There was never anything else that really worked like this. Like it was just Eddie that they were tuning in to see.
Yeah,
but he was spiking quarter hours by like half a point. It was crazy.
Yeah, he was drawing literally hundreds of thousands of viewers for his matches.
Yeah, people would tune in for main events he was in and then just like tune the fuck out on the rest of the show. They only wanted Eddie.
Yeah. So Eddie and Chavo split as a tag team. Chavo got jealous, turned on Eddie. Eddie joins up with Chavo's father, Eddie's older brother, Chavo Classic, for an abbreviated feud where Eddie beats Chavo at the Royal Rumble, and then they go their separate ways and move on to other things because Eddie's got bigger things on his plate.
Yeah, I think that they had originally planned to make this go till WrestleMania, and that would kind of make sense, right?
He was just getting too hot for that.
Yeah, and then like the whole situation with Brock comes up, and they're like, "All right, it's clear what we've got to do."
Yeah. So as a segue, we go to what's going on with Eddie's opponent on this night, Brock Lesnar, which is shockingly only 2 years after his debut, and as he's really become the top guy in all WWE, he is about to leave professional wrestling, which can't overstate how much of a shock this was at the time.
There's so much to this that's literally unique in the history of wrestling. Like, there's never been a top guy who just abandoned the industry just overnight because he was sick of it. There's never been a guy with the title who just gets there a month from WrestleMania. It's like, you know what? I don't even really want the payday. Fuck it. I'm out. Like they've never pushed a guy to the top this quickly. And I think all of that's kind of intertwined. They mishandle this situation from the moment he arrives.
Oh, I mean, yeah. So to kind of retrace the path of Brock Lesnar, he's an amazing amateur athlete, an NCAA champion, heavyweight wrestler at Minnesota, recruited to WWE by Gerald Briscoe, who was always the guy who would bring in the amateur wrestlers. Briscoe knew all the NCAA wrestling coaches. They would kind of feed him their top talent. He signs a huge developmental contract. I mean, it's as soon as he was signed, you start reading about this guy in the newsletters, and it's like, this is the next big superstar. Like, as soon as you see a picture of him, you're like, okay, that's the guy. Like, he's going all the way.
Yeah, and it's funny because you'd always see like Shelton Benjamin just also there because they were a tag team in OVW. So that's how a lot of us found out who Shelton Benjamin was too.
Shelton was a great prospect too.
Yeah, Shelton in any other prospect class would have been like the guy. But he was in a class with Cena, Orton, and Lesnar.
Yeah, that's what I was like. Think of Ed Batista. Realize that those like 5 guys were all like working out together down in Louisville for OVW back in the day.
It's absolutely true.
Yeah, an incredible. WWE needs to do a documentary. I assume they've got footage of like them working out, and they've definitely got the OVW footage. But like, I would love to see a documentary on that class.
Well, not just that, but just like OVW from that period, like the power struggle between Jim Cornette and Paul Heyman and all of that shit.
Yeah, just a fascinating, just an incredible developmental program that they didn't come close to matching until they really got NXT up and running. And I'd even question NXT. I think most of the talent NXT has produced was a lot more ready-made when it got there. Like, these were guys that they were literally picking up from scratch and building.
Yeah, they were taking all the best prospects in the wrestling world, and Jim Cornette was just dragging them around to Six Flags amusement parks all across the Midwest. And they turned them into stars.
Lesnar pushed to the moon right away. He debuts the night after WrestleMania 18, destroys the entire roster, beats The Rock for the world title at SummerSlam 2002. You know, his title run is not fantastic. He loses the belt to the Big Show at Survivor Series. That sets up a title chase where he wins the Royal Rumble, beats Kurt Angle for the world title at WrestleMania 19. So he's a champion for the second time. Then for the rest of the year, he's going back and forth with Angle. They trade the title. He turns heel. And as he comes in here, he's been the champion for a while. I think he won the belt back from Angle in the fall in their Iron Man match on SmackDown.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, seems like he's on top of the world. He's making millions of dollars. He's the top star on SmackDown. He's, I don't know, 26 years old at this point. Like, he's got his whole career in front of him, but he's just he's not into it. He's not feeling this, doesn't like life on the road, hates the travel, hates being away from home, is drinking too much, you know, just not, he's burnt out. He's depressed.
This is literally why you don't do what they did. Like this, if you were making up like a booking playbook and you would have to scratch out, push this guy all the way to the top of the entire industry in 1 year, you would scratch that out because this is what it creates. Like there's no more challenge anymore. He's achieved everything in the business that he could ever possibly achieve. It's only been 2 years. Now, if you're going to ask him to lose, he's going to be like, why would I lose? I've been undefeated for like 2 years straight. That's stupid. Like, it's just, you're creating a monster when you do this. And like, this is what happens. Like the same kind of thing happens to Goldberg where like you get to a point where you pushed a guy so hard, like, fuck, he becomes a monster to deal with. And then you've got nothing left to do with him.
Yeah, but at the same time, you got to push the guy. He's money. Yeah. He's perfect. I would also argue WWE has a fundamental misunderstanding the entire time they're pushing him with what he is. They think that they found the new Rock, the new Austin, the new Hogan, when what they've really found is the greatest monster in the history of professional wrestling. Yeah. He's the Mike Tyson of wrestling. Yes. You need to create someone to beat him, but he's not the top guy in and of himself. So trying to make him be that is a complete misunderstanding. The whole part where he's a baby face and he's drinking milk and shit and cracking jokes, like, wretched. It's awful. A disaster. It almost ruins him because they don't understand that, like, he is a singular prospect, probably the most perfect professional wrestler that could ever possibly exist. I mean, other than the fact that he's not a great talker, but shit, he doesn't need to talk at all. No. He doesn't need to say one word his entire career. Like, literally, he is a physical specimen on par with almost nothing even in sports that we've ever seen. Like, it's just, this is a human being that wrestling got access to that they should never have had. And, like, that's just how this is. Just his physique, his athleticism, his coordination. A guy that size, that muscular, should not be able to move the way that he does. Yeah. And, like, here's the thing, is that there was long a debate about, like, who's the greatest monster of all time? Is it Vader? Is it Andre? Is it Taker? No, it's Lesnar. No. Like, when Lesnar wrestles a small guy, it's the best matches of all time because he's the best at this, and he's uniquely designed for it. He has the most credibility, maybe, of any wrestler who's ever walked in a ring. I'm sorry, Inoki. You'd be very ashamed if you heard me say that. God, I would love to see a shoot fight between Inoki and Lesnar. He would just rub his face into the mat till it fell off. But that's just the situation that this is. But they think that they have, like, a guy to put on posters. They think that they have the guy to do press conferences and Make-A-Wishes. They think they've got that guy. No. And Lesnar rebels against being that because that's just not him. Yeah, you know what Brock Lesnar would say about Make-A-Wish? I don't give a shit about dying kids. Yep. That's who he is. He's a bad guy. Even if the fans cheer him, he's the bad guy. He was born to be the greatest bad guy of all time. But they don't have a good guy to put opposite him yet. Like, if this had come along later, then you've got Cena. Like, Cena and Lesnar should have been a 10-year feud. Like, that should have been a feud that they'd never stop feuding for the entirety of their entire careers. But Brock leaves before Cena gets up there. But, yeah, like, that's what you need. You need that white meat babyface versus this ultimate monster. Yeah, I think he just needed a much longer rise to the top
Yes.
and a much longer run with the belt. Like, he just needed to destroy every single one of the stars from the previous generation, one after another.
I agree.
Rock, Austin, Taker, Triple H. And once he's knocked them all down, by that time, you figured out who is the guy to beat him. Whether it's Cena, whether it's Orton, whether it's Batista, like, we're going to figure out who our next top guy is, our next top baby face. And they're going to be the one who finally beats Lesnar. And like, his first loss could be like WrestleMania 20 or WrestleMania 21 if you really wanted to stretch things out.
Yeah, like, I'm sure that if I had been watching at that time and they did this, I would be like, oh, this is boring. It's just the champion forever. But it would be, if ever you were going to do that, and eventually they're going to do it with JBL, and it's going to be like, why are we doing this? But ever if you were going to just suddenly reintroduce the idea of super long title reigns, it's this guy. He's invincible.
Yeah. You could have used him sparingly like they do today, and he could have been champion for 2 or 3 years.
I actually think they're very smart in the way they use him today. Like, I know that people hate it and they complain all the time.
I wouldn't want him on TV much more than he is.
It would totally overexpose him. It would destroy the mystique. He's not meant to like walk around and be a normal wrestler. The way that they've portrayed him ever since the day he walked into the ring for the first time is, this person's better than everyone else, period. The only way you're ever going to beat him is if he fucks himself, and then you take advantage of it. You are not Brock Lesnar's equal. No one is. Which is incredibly compelling.
So there's one particular story from his book that I find very interesting. It's about him being asked to do a job to Rock on a house show that really feels like it was the beginning of the end. It's a year before this. It's March 15th, 2003. He wrestles The Rock at a house show in Miami. In his book, he says he was the WWE champion, but he wasn't. He was about to win the belt from Kurt Angle at WrestleMania, but he's wrestling The Rock in his hometown, and it kind of makes sense he would put The Rock over here.
Sure.
But his issue is like the way it was handled, that he got to the arena, the agent told him they didn't know what the finish of the match was going to be. Later, as he's talking to Rock about the match, Rock is just like going over what they're going to do. And then he's like, and then I'll hit you with the rock bottom, 1, 2, 3. And like, Lesnar thinks he's joking and he laughs. And Rock's like, no, seriously, I'm winning tonight. They didn't tell you? Yeah, it just feels like something. Maybe Vince just forgot to tell him, but it kind of just feels like something you did to fuck with the guy and test him.
Yeah, and here's the thing, is that Brock hasn't been super open, even in his book, about like history while he was in it the first time, and like really if he loved wrestling, because that's the big knock on him, right? That he never loved wrestling. He's sort of like a Sid, right?
I just hate the idea that like they're obligated to love wrestling. Not everybody loves their job. Like, I don't know. There's this weird thing with wrestling where you have to be a mark and die for it, or you're not legitimate. There's nothing wrong with being a Sting, a Lex Luger, a Brock Lesnar who viewed wrestling as a business and a way to support themselves.
Yeah, like people always say, like, compare him to like Sid. I've heard that comparison many times. I would actually compare him to Sting. That's a great comparison, because those are people who, like, it's not their passion, but they put everything into it. Like, Brock Lesnar never half-assed in the ring, ever.
I actually think some of those are some of the best adjusted people in wrestling.
Yeah.
Are the ones who just view it as their job. It's what they do for a living.
And it's like,
Goldberg.
I'm making a paycheck, man. Come on.
Yeah. They clock in, they clock out.
And it's for the
That's healthy.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
But like, I never could ever hold it against Brock Lesnar, whether he loves it or not. Though I would say that you can't be as good as he got at it as fast as he did without loving it to some degree. Like, he becomes good at it arguably as good, fast, if not faster than Angle, though he actually has OVW to help him and Angle didn't. But like, there have been moments where I felt like Brock Lesnar's been in some of the greatest matches of all time.
I just look at how generous he's been in the ring with guys so much smaller than him. Daniel Bryan, Finn Balor, AJ Styles. If he wanted to just eat those guys alive, he easily could.
Yeah, the bigger the guy is, the more likely he is to eat them alive.
Yeah, sorry, Braun Strowman.
Yeah, like he does not want to deal with Braun Strowman, but like in this match, knowing he's leaving the company, he could take a dump on Eddie Guerrero.
Absolutely.
Easily. He could just half-ass it and it would bury Eddie. But he works his fucking ass off for Eddie in this match.
Puts Eddie over so hard here.
Yes. But without sacrificing any of his mystique or any of his great, like, this is a masterful job of a monster putting over a fiery babyface. Like, he does as good a job as anyone has ever done. It's amazing.
So, I mean, there's other frustrations along the way. He doesn't like this program they put him in with Hardcore Holly, which is admittedly pretty damn stupid.
Why would you? The whole program is predicated upon the idea that Brock Lesnar is a clumsy asshole who injures people, even though Hardcore Holly is the reason that Hardcore Holly got injured.
Yeah. Hardcore Holly sandbagged Lesnar on a powerbomb. Lesnar, being so fucking strong, was somehow still able to pick him up even though he was dead weight, but dropped him on his head as he was putting him down, and Holly got his neck broken.
Obviously, that's a bad situation for everyone.
Yeah.
They're both wrong. Holly paid the price. Sucks. Okay. But like literally the whole program is just, fuck Brock Lesnar. He's a clumsy little jabroni. Like, okay. Why would he want to be part of that?
Yeah. He wasn't happy when they asked him to lose the title to Guerrero. And he says the last straw was when they asked him to have a 10-minute back-and-forth TV match with Holly on the way to WrestleMania. That's the March 4th episode of SmackDown, which is a couple weeks after this show. He told him, no, I'm going over Holly in 3 minutes. And then after the match, he went backstage and told Vince he was quitting.
I mean, let's be clear. Asking your top guy to do a 10-minute back and forth with Hardcore fucking Holly is mishandling at its best.
Yeah. I mean, I think they probably could have worked out a deal with him very similar to what he does now, but I understand why they didn't want to do that at this point. They didn't want to set that precedent that was okay. Although they have Undertaker on that same kind of schedule at this point, where he's not really doing house shows, not really even making many TVs, and really just wrestling on pay-per-views.
But I mean, it's not like you can be like, oh, the Undertaker's doing it, why can't I? Especially at this point. Like, no, that's just him.
Yeah. I mean, if they let Lesnar do that, why is Triple H working every single house show? You know, why is everybody else doing it?
Well, and as we've mentioned many times before, they shouldn't have been. It's stupid.
Yeah, that's another thing they could do, is just lighten up their schedule, since their house shows weren't drawing at this point anyway.
And I mean, like, here we are 15 years later, they really still haven't done that.
No, and like now that they're with the TV money they're making, there's no point to these house shows. Like, do them sparingly in big markets where you're actually going to make money, and like, just stop running so many shows. Stop killing your talent.
Yeah. Or like send out house shows around the loop and just have like, all right, this house show is going to have an R-Truth match for the U.S. title against Rusev and a bunch of jabronis on it. And then just let your top guys rest.
Yeah. I mean, you can reinvent these house shows where it's like, there's one good match on it. You know, Seth Rollins works once a week. Your other top guys work one time per week on the house shows instead of 3-4 times a week.
Yeah. And it's like, it's not like you don't have to have them travel or do whatever it is that you normally have them do, but you just need to understand that like you're taking years away from your talent for no reason.
So Lesnar ends up signing a crazy non-compete agreement that bars him from doing any wrestling or mixed martial arts or boxing until 2010.
Which is wild.
Yeah, it's nuts that he like went with that, but he just wanted out so bad he didn't fight them. He would later regret this when he realized he had no way to make any money without those things, and ended up suing his way out of it and like reaching an agreement that let him go to UFC.
Yeah, it's really interesting, honestly, because like he genuinely thought that football was going to work. Which, I mean, why wouldn't you if you're Brock Lesnar? Nothing's ever not worked, right?
He wasn't that far off. He
Yeah.
was shockingly good considering he had not played football since high school.
Honestly, if he had stuck with it, he probably would have made a team the following year.
Well, that was the thing, is they wanted him to go to NFL Europe, and like he wasn't going to move to Europe. The whole point was he wanted to spend more time at home.
Right.
So yeah, that didn't work out. But yeah, if he had stuck with it, he would have ended up playing the NFL. I think he would have been really damn good.
How fucking wild is that?
He's just that much of a physical specimen.
He would have been on the Vikings, though, so he would have just been a failure his whole career. So let's move on.
Boom. So Lesnar, they've been teasing Lesnar versus Goldberg the last few major pay-per-views. They had a little stare down at Survivor Series, and then another one at the Rumble, and then at the Rumble, Brock came in and attacked Goldberg and got him eliminated from the match. So clear that they're going with Brock versus Goldberg at WrestleMania. No reason for the belt to be involved in that match, and especially once it turns out it's both of their last matches with the company, which, we'll cover that when we get to WrestleMania 20 someday, but an all-time debacle of a match there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're not going to talk about the match, but it's interesting, the feud, because I really feel like this feud is the first cool thing Goldberg does in the company the whole time he's there.
Yeah, this No Way Out is one of the few good nights he has as a character in WWE in this run.
And this gets him over. They should have just done this from the start.
Yeah, I mean, this was a dream match. From the moment Goldberg signed, it was like, oh, when are they going to do Goldberg-Lesnar?
And we're obviously, and then the second that they're on screen together, like Survivor Series and the Rumble and all that stuff, it's like, oh, here it comes. We're doing it.
Yeah. So you got to get the belt off Lesnar. There's not very many options on SmackDown to carry the title. Really, you've got Kurt Angle, who can, he's a star. He can be champion anytime, but he doesn't have any particular momentum at this point, or a built-in program for the title. John Cena is really starting to get over, but it's too soon to put the belt on him.
And if anything, their lesson with Lesnar is going to teach them not to do that with Cena.
Yeah. And then you've got the Big Show, who is doing okay, but do we really want to see the Big Show as the world champion?
No.
And Undertaker's not around. He's been off screen for a while, and he's about to come back as the dead man.
And suddenly, once you get past those guys, SmackDown's looking real rough.
Yeah, Chris Benoit had been on SmackDown. He won the Royal Rumble in January, and then they moved him over to Raw because they were looking for him as a fresh opponent for Triple H for WrestleMania.
Right.
So, yeah, that really just leaves Eddie Guerrero. I mean, not really any other options.
And boy, did they get lucky when that Eddie got over when he did, because if he doesn't, they got nobody.
Yeah, I mean, Eddie is by far the smallest world champion they've ever had at this point. Like, he is significantly shorter than Bret Hart or Shawn Michaels. I mean, I don't know, how tall do you think Eddie is? Like 5'9"?
5'9", yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Bret and Shawn, both 6 feet even, I'd say. 6'1" in boots, probably.
Yeah, Eddie's a small guy. And, before he started doing so many steroids to, beef himself up, he was a skinny guy, too.
He's so, he can't straighten his arms out. It looks like they're so big.
It literally looks like if you've ever seen one of those games or movies where somebody takes some sort of potion and muscles explode out of their arms, they're just coming out in random directions. It's crazy.
He looks like the Incredible Hulk. It's really bad.
The fact that he's still as nimble as he is while being so heavily on the roids, when other people like this, Billy Kidman, it completely ruins their careers, is incredible. He was
in so much pain his last couple years because of this, because of what he was doing to his body.
And his style is so heavy on the knees and stuff, and to be carrying 50 extra pounds of muscle is just, it's suicide. You can't do it.
But it's just I don't think he gets the belt if he doesn't have that physique. I just don't think Vince would have done it.
There's no way.
It's sad to say. It's unfair. I wish it didn't work that way, but Yeah, I don't think he's getting the belt without that physique.
And to push it even further, the guys who hold the belts now, like none of this happens if Eddie doesn't win it here. Like
Yeah.
Eddie changes that dynamic in WWE by getting over to the extent that he did and by being in the right place at the right time. But like Ray was never going to get it without Eddie. And then like all these other guys like Daniel Bryan and CM Punk, like all these smaller guys, I don't know that they get the opportunity. Like maybe they eventually would have just out of necessity, but like he's the one who changes the dynamic in this company.
So Eddie won the title shot after winning the SmackDown Royal Rumble, which is, really the only time they've done like a proper Royal Rumble on free TV. After Benoit jumped to Raw, Paul Heyman, who was the general manager of SmackDown, announced they were going to do a second Royal Rumble match on SmackDown, a 15-man Rumble match. Eddie won, last eliminating Kurt Angle. Was pretty awesome match. Great moment when Eddie won. Because for me, when Eddie won this, it meant he was winning the title because it was clear that they were going to have to get the belt off Lesnar to do that Goldberg match.
Now, I will say that I did not know at this point that Lesnar was leaving. Like,
no, I don't think anybody did. I think they kept that under wraps until like maybe a week before WrestleMania is when I remember that coming out and just being stunned, like jaw hit the floor when I read it.
Right. So like I had no real idea that Eddie was going to win the title. I just thought this was like a neat thing. Like, oh man, Eddie's going to get a shot. I assumed like Chavo was going to screw him out of it. It didn't seem like that feud was going to be done as abruptly as it was. And then for it to like transition so fully into this, and this feud is so much about Lesnar versus Goldberg that Guerrero is only like tangentially part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I just looked at it as when they announced they were doing a number one contenders match at No Way Out, then it's like, okay, we know Lesnar's going to wrestle Goldberg. Like,
oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, like unless they were going to have Lesnar lose the title on TV to somebody else, it just seemed like, okay, he's going to have to dump the belt because he's going to wrestle Goldberg, not Cena or Angle or Big Show, who are the three guys in the number one contenders match.
I don't think that ever occurred to me, but that totally.
But yeah, well, there was still just this doubt in your mind. It's just like they're not really going to make Eddie Guerrero the world champion, are they?
Yeah, and it's not like there was like a smooth, steady transition of Eddie towards the title. Like he had been U.S. champion, but to be perfectly honest, it's not like he got a bunch of big victories right before this push.
Yeah, it was just
victories over Chavo.
Yeah, he just hit the ramp. Like he cut some awesome promos on the way in here, talking about
like, I'm an addict for it promo.
Yeah, I'm addicted to the title. Yeah, just like talking about all the demons he had overcome, how Lesnar was just one more obstacle in his way, and Brock Lesnar did his most hilarious segment of all time,
the mariachi band.
Oh my God, so much charisma from Brock here.
Yeah, here's the thing: is that Brock is clearly so relieved to be a heel because he's having so much fun, and it's almost like it's hard to believe that he is miserable and wants to leave because the Brock you're seeing on television is dynamite. This is what you want.
Yeah,
this is like king heel of all time.
What a shithead. Yeah. Like, just comes out with a mariachi band playing in a sombrero, and he's dancing as he conducts them.
Because the whole idea is that Brock Lesnar does not take Eddie Guerrero seriously. And why should he?
Yeah, he's twice his size. He's 100 pounds heavier.
He's looking past him to Goldberg. And Eddie just keeps reminding him, like, you're looking past me, and that's why you're going to lose. And indeed.
Yeah. So they set up a good tease for this on Raw where Steve Austin, who's the Raw general manager at the time, gives Goldberg a front row ticket to No Way Out and tells him, son, don't do anything I wouldn't do, goddamn.
Which is a great line because,
yeah,
Steve Austin would have fucking destroyed him.
Yeah, gonna raise some hell.
Austin's involvement in this whole thing is kind of weird, isn't it?
Well, because they have no dates left on Goldberg's contract and he won't do any more, he doesn't really make any appearances on TV on the way into WrestleMania. So the feud just becomes Austin versus Lesnar. Like, Lesnar steals Austin's ATV is the feud.
It's really weird too, because you feel like in their heart they wish they could make this like a triple threat or something. But like,
I thought they were going to, which would have been really cheesy because Austin was doing a ton of physicality here. Like, he takes F5s, he's brawling with Lesnar. There's chair shots. Like, for a guy who's supposed to be retired, he's getting really physical here.
Yeah, and like I understand that his whole deal is like he doesn't want to have an actual match unless he can do it right. It's not that he couldn't do it; he just wouldn't be any good in his mind. Which
this would have been a great time to do that Austin Lesnar match.
That's the thing, is that like at the end of that match, and again, we'll cover it in full length once we get to it, but Austin wins that match.
Yeah, Austin stuns them both and pours beer on both of them.
I mean, come on.
Dickheads are both walking out.
Yeah.
So Heyman announced a triple threat match at this show to determine the #1 contender for WrestleMania. It would be Kurt Angle versus The Big Show versus John Cena. Rest of the card is not much of note. SmackDown doesn't have a particularly deep roster. Only other kind of important match is Rey versus Chavo for the Cruiserweight title. I just don't think they should have been doing like solo brand pay-per-views at this point. Like, Raw could pull them off, but like SmackDown did not have the roster depth to do 3-hour pay-per-views. I think we'd have been much better off with this pay-per-view if it had a couple Raw matches on it too.
Yeah, though, I mean, we were talking about before the show started, like the WWE probably thought that SmackDown was going to have the right roster. It's just because they gave him like all this great OVW talent. Yeah. Like they put Doug Basham and DiMaggio up there. They put Benjamin and Haas and Lesnar and all like this top new talent.
Fuck them all up.
They fuck them all up in a row. And it's just like, oh, well, we got nobody left. We gave you everybody.
Yeah. The guy who got over was Lesnar and he quit. Like, yeah, they just end up fucked at the end of this.
So when people say like, why'd you put all the good talent on Raw? Like, it's clear that they tried. It's just that none of this talent got over.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Orton and Batista catch fire on Raw. But yeah, this card's looking a lot stronger if it's got like Benoit versus Shawn Michaels or like Benoit and Michaels against Evolution in a tag match. That sprinkle in a couple Raw matches here and we've got a much stronger card.
Where's Edge at this point? Is he injured again?
He's hurt. He hasn't come back until after WrestleMania. He's probably cleared by now. I think they just didn't have anything for him before WrestleMania.
Right.
And also they moved him to Raw, which was another dumb thing they did.
Yeah. Is this the one where he comes back and he says, I don't like you to Orton?
Yes.
I don't like you.
Oh, God. He was a horrible babyface.
Just the worst.
I mean, he sucked so much they turned him heel, and it was the best thing that ever happened to him.
Oh my God.
So what else is going around this time? I feel like this is the birth of the so-called WWE main event style. I don't know if you remember that phrase, but that was popping up. Yeah, this is when Vince gives his like big speech to all the wrestlers where he tells them they need to slow down, fewer high spots, more drama. We want to make the rules matter again. The referees are going to call the match like it's a shoot. So if the guys fuck up and do something that would get them disqualified, the referee's just going to call for the disqualification, even if that's not supposed to be the finish. And the heat's going to be on the wrestler, not the referee for that.
Which is dumb.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. I mean, yeah. Who really wants that? Like, what does that really give us?
Vince does this stuff all the time, where he'll just like reactionarily. It'll be like something that he sees where it just pisses him off. He's like, you know what? Fuck that. We're not doing that anymore at all, ever. And it's like it doesn't make a lot of sense to make wide sweeping things like that for your whole company, but that's just Vince. He does that from time to time. Or like, we're going to have no managers ever. Everyone speaks for themselves. And then like 2 years later, like everyone has a manager.
Yeah. I mean, they are understanding they need to change things. I mean, they're clear. Like the fact that they put the world titles on Benoit and Guerrero clearly suggests they're going in a new direction where they're going to emphasize in-ring wrestling more. The thing is, really just Benoit and Guerrero are bridges to get them to Orton and Cena, who are the guys they really want to push.
Right. So, I mean, like, we as wrestling fans, like most of the wrestling fans that you're going to run into kind of came of age during this period, right? Where like in-ring like prowess first became like an actual thing that mattered. Like most of the roster could wrestle. Like this is the first time when that's really true, right? And like it becomes this fixation that like all the indie wrestling from this period is pure wrestling. Everyone's got to be like the best pure technical wrestler. Like Ring of Honor even had like a pure wrestling title, which was nonsense. But like it's boomeranged so completely away from the 90s where nobody gave a shit about what happened in the ring, except for like the smarkiest of smarks, to now where they're literally building the company around the two best workers because they're the two best workers. And that's just a bizarre change.
Yeah. And I mean, historically, like really great in-ring matches in my mind have not been what drew money. Like great promos drew money, personal issues drew money, personalities drew money. Good matches were a nice bonus, but like people were paying to see their hero and the villain historically.
Yeah, great matches are supposed to get people over so that they can become top guys so that they can be lazy because they've already drawn the house. Like, that's the idea. Like, once you're already on top, you don't have to be having amazing matches all the time anymore. But now, like, especially these days, like, there's such an expectation. Like, if you pushed a guy to the top and he couldn't have, like, amazing matches all the time, like, Baron Corbin is better than almost everyone on the 1998 WWE roster.
Yeah, and Baron Corbin sucks.
And Baron Corbin fucking sucks.
So, after that incredibly long preamble, it's finally time to get to the actual show.
Yeah.
It's February 15th, 2004. We're at the Cow Palace in San Francisco, California. Sellout crowd of over 11,000 people on hand for a gate of approximately $450,000. The show was not sold out on the day of the show, but walk-up business was massive. Eddie Guerrero, as we know, huge draw in the Hispanic community. The culture of Hispanic wrestling fans has always been walk-up. Lucha Libre shows always do their business on the day of the show. Fans don't buy tickets in advance, and that was what happened here. People showed up by the thousands to buy tickets on the day of the show.
And I don't think that they were particularly ready for that either. Like, this crowd is all people here for Eddie and nothing else.
Yeah. It's also weird. Like, the crowd, the arena is like half empty at showtime. Like, when they start the show, there's nobody in their seats. Like, I don't feel like the place filled up until halfway through the show. Apparently the Cow Palace only has like one actual entrance. I've not been there. I just read that somewhere, and it would help explain this. That and so much of the business being walk up.
You think there were just like 2,000 people in line to buy tickets because they didn't bother to until the day of?
Yeah, and then it took them forever to get into the arena and get to their seats.
And it makes sense. And especially, like, if you're only here to see Eddie,
what do you care?
What do you care that you missed Jamie Noble versus Nydia?
Ah, shit, we missed the Bashams versus Too Cool. The show does 265,000 buys. That's way down from the previous year, which was 450,000 buys. But that 2003 show had Rock versus Hogan, Steve Austin's return, and it was a joint Raw and SmackDown show. So expecting it to match that is definitely not realistic.
And that was arguably the last show like that of that era, because that WrestleMania kind of marks the end of like all those stars.
Yeah, that WrestleMania is kind of the end of the road for Austin, for Rock, for Hogan. The big mega stars all kind of, take their leave at that point.
Yep.
So this was the most buys that any SmackDown show did this year. A pretty decent number. I don't think coming out of this you would have been like, oh, Eddie can't draw.
Yeah, though, I mean, I remember reading at the time that, like, Eddie wasn't, like, a huge buy rate draw. He drew really crazy on like house shows and TV ratings,
Yeah.
which are primarily what is associated, especially house shows in the southern part of the country. So basically, like his Hispanic viewership weren't buying the pay-per-views, but they were tuning into free TV to watch, and they were coming to the shows.
Yeah. I mean, as we established, a lot of that Hispanic audience didn't have cable, so they didn't have access to pay-per-view.
Right, exactly.
They might have been going to the bars to watch the show, but WWE's not getting a cut of that.
Yeah.
Although I think around this time is when they started cracking down on bars showing the shows illegally.
Yeah, that made me miserable. That's how I used to watch them all.
Yeah, exactly. Go to the bar, order one drink, and sit there all night.
Hell yeah. No other wrestling fans in the place, just me watching the show by myself.
Woo, good times. On commentary, we've got Michael Cole and Taz, who were surprisingly good. I actually thought they were a pretty good team.
Yeah, they worked phenomenal together. Like, Taz brought some like actual character out of Michael Cole to some degree, but like Taz as an analyst is maybe the best that they've ever had.
He was really good at this in this era. I don't know if it was Paul Heyman producing him or what it was, but he was really great for a couple years here.
But like he would take matches, like I literally thought about this when I was watching Hardcore Holly versus Rhino. Like this match sucks, but like Taz will take everything happening in the match and just make it sound much more interesting than it is. Just be like, oh, he's working the neck right there. Oh, Hardcore Holly used to have that neck surgery, and he's working it. See how he's tweaking it like that? And it's like, oh, man. It actually makes the dumb bullshit they're doing matter.
Yeah. So it's kind of a weird opening. We cut right into the arena without an intro, and Sable and Tori Wilson come down to the ring. They had both been on the cover of Playboy earlier this month, and they just kind of welcome us to the show. I just felt like they were killing time to let people get to their seats.
Yeah, what's the runtime on this show?
Like 2.5 hours. It's real short.
Like they are just milking every fucking minute. Out of this
2.5 hours with a lot of padding here. It was a stretch to get there. Like they had maybe 90 minutes of content here.
It's just so funny because like this is one of the like most important shows in WWE history just because of the main event. So a lot of people probably do go back and watch this and they're like, man, what's up with this show?
The main event is like the last 45 minutes of the show between video package, entrances, the match, and then the celebration afterwards. Like, yeah, I mean, the last two matches are literally like half the show.
They should have just given them like 5 hours. Just fucking give them the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, there was not a lot else going on here. Now we get the video package, which is focused on Brock and Eddie. Does a great job putting over that Brock is a dick and a bully and Eddie is a fighter.
Yeah.
And then opening match, Too Cool, Rikishi, and Scotty 2 Hotty defend the WWE Tag Team titles against the Basham Brothers and Shaniqua in a handicap match. Shaniqua is Linda Miles, the co-winner of the second season of Tough Enough, with a dominatrix gimmick. Leading me to the question, who on the writing team from the early 2000s was into S&M? Because there were a whole lot of these storylines floating out around this time. Yeah.
Who looked at a tall black woman and said, that's a dominatrix. It's either Kurt Angle or Michael Hayes.
I thought Linda Miles had a ton of potential.
And they're kind of positioning here as like a new China.
New China, yeah.
And like, it's a good idea.
Yeah,
like,
she's not as jacked as China, but she's over 6 feet tall in those heels she's wearing.
Yeah, and like she's credible when she's throwing clotheslines and stuff.
Oh, like, yeah, she could beat the shit out of Scotty.
And like, she's into this. Like, the problem is that the Bashams are terrible.
Yeah, so the Bashams are not actually brothers. So Doug Basham was the Damaja in OVW, and like he was Jim Cornette's favorite wrestler. Like Cornette thought this guy was the next big star.
And he had like long hair, and he was like a rock star. Like that was his whole deal.
And then they brought him up to a TV taping and shaved his head because they wanted to see how much he looked like the other Basham guy when they were both bald. They don't really look that similar at all.
No. And like to do this just to make them like a twins tag team is so stupid.
They're a shit tag team. Like,
They have no
garbage.
chemistry. They're just like two generic white dudes with like no. They're just in leather pants. Like they're supposed to be like submissive to Shaniqua, but they're really not. Like they don't. It's not like these two are getting like really into the S&M deal. But like, how much would you get into it?
No, like where this gimmick's not going anywhere.
So like, I don't know. It's just a deeply stupid idea. But they pushed these guys hard for years.
They really thought they had something here, and they did not.
Like 2 years from now.
Too Cool is in control early. Shaniqua nearly gets the stink face. Scotty goes for the worm, but he gets knocked out by Shaniqua with a clothesline. There's a heat segment on Scotty. He makes the hot tag to Rikishi. He takes out both the Bashams. He goes for the bonsai drop on Shaniqua, but gets thrown off the ropes. Scotty then takes out both the Bashams. Rikishi blocks a clothesline, hits a Samoan drop on Shaniqua, and then the bonsai drop to get the win. This would actually be Shaniqua's final WWE appearance. She would be released by the company shortly after this show. I think she just didn't really like wrestling, did not get along well backstage, ended up becoming a teacher and is now a college basketball referee. Good for her.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, obviously had a lot of potential, but doesn't seem like wrestling was for her.
No. And I mean, she wasn't well thought of at the time. I know that.
No. Next up, we've got Jamie Noble versus Nydia. So we start the show with 2 straight intergender matches.
But WWE's never done intergender wrestling. Dickheads.
The storyline is Noble inherited a bunch of money from a rich relative who died. Nydia was spending too much, and Noble was mad at her. And then Tajiri hit her with his dreaded black mist, which blinded her.
Yes, you need to understand that the green mist is temporary, but the black mist is forever.
That's the serious stuff. That's the shoot mist.
That's right.
Noble began to abuse Nydia and challenged her to a match at No Way Out. He told her she could only get out of the match if he gave back all the stuff that he had bought her. So Noble has to wrestle the match blindfolded here. They have a quick, 3-minute match. Noble peeks out from under his hood as Nydia has gone to the top rope. He throws her off and then locks her in a choke for the submission. Nothing much to the match. I mean, wasn't a particularly good storyline.
Yeah, here's the thing, is that Jamie Noble and Nydia were a great tandem. Breaking them up this way was ill-advised because neither one of them will really ever do anything after this.
Especially, what were you going to do with Nydia?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of backed her into this role where it's the only thing that makes sense for her to do.
Yeah, how is she going to be anything but the trailer park queen at this point?
Yeah, I don't know. And they never really find a good role for Noble after this, and it's just kind of meh. It's unfortunate. Noble and Nydia are doing their best with this. They genuinely are. And Noble's a gifted comedy actor. But there's just not much meat on the bone here. Yeah.
They recap Kurt Angle being attacked on SmackDown. He was left laying in the locker room and then came back to attack Big Show and Cena with a chair. Then Josh Matthews, who is somehow looking douchier than usual, interviews Kurt Angle.
Turtleneck on, Josh. Come on, man.
And the frosted hair, what are we doing here? What is this look?
Such an asshole.
Yeah. Man, he could have gotten over as a heel looking like that.
He did eventually.
Yeah. Angle says he knows that it was Show or Cena who attacked him. Cena shows up. Cena says he's the type who would take Angle out, but he would do it to his face. And then he slaps him and they get into a fight.
Let the record show, by the way, that this is the second month in a row that they've done a mystery assailant jump somebody in the back and we never find out who it actually was.
Who was it last month?
They did the same thing with Ray. Or no, with Eddie. Where it's supposedly Ray thinks it's Chavo, but Chavo says he didn't do it, and they just never investigated.
It's probably actually Angle.
Yeah.
I don't know
mean,
who. Maybe Angle faked the attack here. I don't know.
I don't know, but that would eventually be the storyline, so maybe it was.
Yeah. Next up, we've got the world's greatest tag team against the APA, who are surprisingly still over his faces at this point. They've just been thrown back together after they both failed as singles guys.
And they're still over spaces despite the fact that JBL looks like a goddamn narc.
Oh my God. So yeah, JBL has he looks like JBL now. He's cut his hair and stopped dyeing it. He's shaved. So he looks like JBL, but he's still playing Bradshaw here. And man, he looks like an asshole.
And it's horrible. It's like, because he's wearing the same gear, so it just evokes in your head the idea of the old JBL who was like a badass Texas ass kicker, but now he just looks like the guy who your boss at work put on some tights and now he's gonna fight.
Yeah, he's also fat now.
Yeah,
everything about this presentation sucks.
It's just terrible.
He desperately needed the heel turn,
but it almost makes it more effective when the heel turn comes, because you feel that he and Simmons are washed up, it's over. Yeah. And so he turns heel in order to prevent becoming irrelevant. That's the whole idea.
I don't feel like we've ever really talked about the world's greatest tag team before. I was a big fan of these guys. I thought they were a great tag team.
Splitting them up was a huge mistake, because this is probably, they tried maybe 24 tag teams between 02 and 06.
Yeah,
and they all fail. Yeah, this is the only one that gets over. And they got that rub from Kurt Angle from being Team Angle. And even though they're young, they have amazing chemistry together.
Yeah, it's just a perfect combination. If you got Benjamin, who's super athletic and charismatic, and Haas, who's a little bland but is a really solid technician. He was a good tag wrestler, didn't really have the personality to make it on his own. I get why they thought Shelton could be a singles star, but just never panned out, never had the promo ability.
Yeah, if they could go back and change it, I think they leave these two together. And it's funny because they gave them the world's greatest tag team as a joke to be look at these arrogant pricks. But by the time they break up, they're probably the world's greatest tag team.
Yeah. Bradshaw's arm was injured by Benjamin on SmackDown, so it's heavily wrapped up here. Cole says the winner will be in line for a shot at the tag titles. Thank God he gave this match some meaning.
Yeah, right.
Haas and Benjamin focus on Farouk's arm. Bradshaw takes the hot tag and he sticks Benjamin with a power bomb, but Haas breaks up the pin. Bradshaw hits Benjamin with a slam off the top rope. Haas gets distracted in the ring. He gets leveled with the clothesline from hell, but Benjamin is the legal man. He hits Bradshaw with a super kick and gets the pin. Was fine. It was a quick match. I didn't have any problem with it.
Yeah, it was what it was. I mean, this is all part of a storyline that's deliberately leading to the APA breaking up. So they're just here to lose, basically.
Yeah, they lose a bunch of matches in a row, and then Heyman kind of gives Bradshaw a devil's advocate offer where he's like, well, I can just fire Farouk or I can fire the both of you. It's your choice.
And then a scumbag, he chooses, no, go ahead and fire my best friend.
Sells out and starts wearing that suit and goes Wall Street on us.
Yep. Great heat. Great heat.
Now we see Goldberg walk into the arena and he takes his seat in the front row. He gives a nice hug to the little girl sitting next to him.
Goldberg, great guy.
This is seeing what would become of Goldberg in his 2016 run, where he would be, just this super nice guy. I'm doing this for the kids, baby face.
Do you think if they could have shown that then, they could have done something here?
Yeah, because that's the thing is they were trying to give him personality, but it was just by having him do a bunch of stupid shit and look like an idiot.
Yeah, they were trying to make him Mr. Badass without really realizing that he already just is that. But if you just let him be this person that he clearly wants to be, that if he doesn't do that when he comes back for his newest run, I'm not sure that run gets over anywhere near as well as it does, right?
No, and yeah, this was just this is one of the few good nights he had in this run. It's one of the only times it clicked.
for years after this, I had an immense amount of fondness for Goldberg, which really only comes from the fact that he helped Eddie win the title. But like, just I loved him on this night. He's such a fucking badass.
We get a recap of the events of the Rumble with Goldberg and Lesnar. They had a confrontation backstage before the Rumble. Then Goldberg entered the Rumble number 30, hit everybody with spears and jackhammers until Lesnar snuck in and hit him with the F5. That allowed Kurt Angle to eliminate Goldberg, and then Goldberg speared Paul Heyman during a promo on Raw. And then Goldberg hugs another young kid. What a great guy.
What a great dude.
Paul Heyman comes out. He does a promo. Heyman gets on the mic, and then Lesnar comes out. He challenges Goldberg. Lesnar calls Goldberg a bitch. Goldberg jumps the railing, gets in the ring. Lesnar goes for the F5, but Goldberg slips out of it, nails Brock with the jackhammer. Yeah. And then he gets arrested and dragged out of the arena by security.
Just so awesome.
Yeah. Oh, this is a good segment.
Like, and I'm glad that they set this up ahead of time, because if they hadn't, then the entire time, like, we already had a period in the match between Eddie and Lesnar where they're looking for Goldberg, but it would have just been so
if he was sitting at ringside, yeah, people would have had their eyes on him the whole match.
They actually do something brilliant in the main event, which is, I'll just mention it now because we're on the topic, but like, there's that moment where they're all down, like Eddie's down, the ref's down, and the whole crowd just looks to the ramp waiting for Goldberg to come down, and he doesn't. Like, they just like wait like an extra minute just to make people look back to the ring and think, oh, I guess he's not coming. And then he comes. That's genius. I love that.
Hardcore Holly now runs down to the ring to go after Lesnar, who bails out, and we get, I think, an impromptu Hardcore Holly versus Rhino match.
Yay.
For some reason, they kick the commentary over to the Spanish announcers in the middle of the match.
Yeah, I was so confused about that. Like, they were just like, yeah, let's just let Carlos Cabrera and Hugo Savinovich do the commentary for like a minute. Why? Had they ever done that any other time?
No, but this match sucked that much.
Do you think that was like an attempt to suck up to their Hispanic audience? Or what?
Probably. Could
or
be.
If they were, maybe Cole and Taz were just bored. They're just like, yeah, you guys take it.
They wrestle. Rhino hits the gore. Holly rolls out of the ring. My only reaction is disappointment that this doesn't end the match.
Yep.
Holly makes it back into the ring at the count of 9, and then he hits an Alabama slam out of nowhere and gets the pin. Thank God that match is over. It went like 9 minutes and felt like it went 30.
Are we on the same page that Hardcore Holly's main event run is one of the stupidest things ever?
It was so bad. So bad. It was totally just like a, hey, you've been here forever. Like, here's something. Like, let's give the guy something because he's been with us for like 15 years.
It's just so bizarre. And I know that they were just looking for like anybody to step up and like grab the brass ring, as Vince always says. But like, man, Hardcore Holly, he's been a jobber for 10 years.
Yeah, like no way was he credible enough to challenge for the world title.
And it's not like they build him up. Like, he comes back from obscurity because he was doing a job match for Lesnar and right into a title program.
We get a Ray Chavo video package, and then back in the arena, the lights go out, the gong sounds, and they play an Undertaker tease package. He is coming back at WrestleMania as the dead man to fight Kane.
Yeah, I had completely forgotten that this was this run for The Undertaker, so I was very excited when I saw this.
Yeah. Next up, for the Cruiserweight title, Rey Mysterio defends against Chavo Guerrero. I had not seen Mysterio's jumping out of the stage entrance for a while, and that was such a great idea.
God, I loved it.
Like,
who's that jumping out the sky?
I can't believe they ever went away from that.
I assume that it's just because like his knees couldn't take a fall. Like,
yeah, right probably too hard on his knees until his recent trip to the Fountain of Youth.
Yes, watching Ray pre his knee surgeries, which unfortunately isn't this just the way that, like, by the time people actually
Yeah.
make it to the main event, they're like all broken down and they can't do what got them there in the first place?
It's almost universally true that, yeah, by the time guys get to their prime kind of psychologically, they're past their prime physically.
Yeah, it's a shame because, like, later Ray would still be good. And even Ray now is phenomenal, like, compared to almost anyone else. But Ray here, there's never been a cruiserweight like this. Like, nobody ever did shit like this, ever. Like, untouchable in the history of wrestling.
I think these years for the cruiserweight division are really underrated.
Like, I agree.
This was a legit good title for a couple years here with Ray and Chavo and Gregory Helms, Ultimo Dragon, Tajiri.
Popping up.
Yeah, they had a lot of talent here, and they actually booked this division pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you were one of those people who watched the B shows, like, I used to watch Velocity every week. Because every week it would just be like Paul London versus Jimmy Yang for 25 minutes.
Yeah. So Mysterio is backed up by the boxer Jorge Paez, and Chavo has Chavo Classic in his corner. It's very weird that Chavo Classic and Eddie are brothers because Chavo is like literally almost 30 years older than Eddie.
Yeah, that's the funny thing is that whenever Chavo Jr. calls him Uncle Eddie, it's like, oh, yeah. Because otherwise you never think about it that way.
Chavo and Eddie are only a couple years apart in age because, by the time Eddie was born, like, Chavo was having kids.
Eddie was an accident baby.
Yeah, God, his parents must have been really old when they had him.
Real damn old.
Chavo controls early with a slow pace. Ray makes a comeback and hits the 619, but Chavo Classic trips him when he tries to follow up with a springboard. Then Jorge Paez knocks Chavo Classic the fuck out with a right hand.
Just glorious.
Mysterio drops the dime on Chavo, but can only get two. Mysterio goes for a super Frankensteiner. Chavo counters into a rib breaker from the top. Chavo gets heat on Ray's ribs for a while. Ray hits a DDT on the apron, but he can't follow up. They go back in the ring where Ray hits a moonsault to a standing Chavo for a close 2 count. Then Ray hits the 619 and the seated senton, but Chavo rolls through it into a single leg crab, and he elevates it and really wrenches it on. Ray gets to the ropes, but Chavo takes his time breaking the hold. The referee admonishes Chavo as Ray climbs up to the top rope. Chavo Classic pushes Ray off the top. Chavo gets him in a small package, gets the 1, 2, 3, and pulls the upset to win the Cruiserweight title.
This is a great match. And I remember thinking, like, when I watched it live, this is a 2-match show, obviously. But, like, these two have phenomenal chemistry. Really only outmatched for Ray by his Uncle Eddie. Yeah.
And they're definitely toning things down here and working more of a quote-unquote WWE style, but they definitely pulled it off.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, this is just fantastic. Like, I can't say enough about it. I am not a fan of, let's just say, anything Chavo Guerrero would do for the entire rest of his career. But this match, fantastic.
And then Josh Matthews catches up with Chavo backstage. Chavo is right in front of Eddie's locker room, and he buries Eddie, says he'll never win the title because he's a junkie and an addict.
This promo reminded me so much of that, like, I kicked Brett's leg out of his leg.
Same promo. Concept.
It's the same idea, and he does the same thing where he just starts, like, repeating himself at the end because they just let him keep talking until, like, Chavo Classic just drags him off.
Next up, we've got the number 1 contenders triple threat match. Kurt Angle versus The Big Show versus John Cena. Winner will challenge the WWE champion at WrestleMania. Before the match, they show the tail of the tape, including career highlights. Cena's only listed career highlight is PhD in Thugonomics.
This is the funniest tale of the tape in wrestling history, because literally on one side it's like Olympic gold medal, 2-time world champion. The other one, it's like Big Show, one-time world champion, 3-time tag champion. The other one, PhD in thugonomics.
Yeah.
It's got to feel like this big-ass gap.
Times have really changed.
John Cena's done nothing at this point. Like
he's just an asshole.
Yeah. He just cuts promos that people like, but he has no business being here.
He's gotten a bunch of big feuds, but he lost all the matches against all the big guys he went against. Like he lost to Lesnar, he lost to Undertaker, he lost to Angle.
Yeah, and at this point, he's still like, is he in the process of turning face, or is it recently turned face?
He's a face. He turned face in the fall.
Okay.
His last feud as a heel was against Angle. They had a match at No Mercy back in October, and then after that, he turned face and he was on Benoit's team at Survivor Series against Lesnar.
Got it.
So he's a couple months into the face run, and he's really getting over here.
Right.
Pop is huge when he comes out.
And like the rap that he does, people are so into it.
Yeah. I mean, the rapping, it was a great gimmick. Like without that, I don't know how he would have gotten over.
Oh God, no! Like he just plain wouldn't have. Like even if he had done like the throwback jerseys and the thugonomics, like
it was the freestyle.
It had to be the freestyle. Like that's what got people interested.
Yeah. I mean, I think he could have gotten over as a heel, like arrogant pretty boy, but like as a face, he's definitely not getting over without this character.
Yeah, without him being discovered freestyling in the back of a bus on a European tour with Rikishi, which is the weirdest origin story of all time.
There's a good shot he ends up getting cut.
Oh yeah, it was going to happen. I think Bruce Pritchard even said on the John Cena show that they did, like they had nothing for him. It was over.
Man, they rushed him up onto the main roster with no plan for him.
They thought he was the future, but they just didn't give him anything.
Like, yeah, comes in his first night, has a great match with Kurt Angle, and then Dick after that.
Yeah, they didn't have anything for him. They were just calling people. They had maybe the greatest class of talent in the history of any company, and they were just calling them up for no reason, left and right.
Think of what they did with them. So Cena is just this like generic like rookie. Orton is the same thing, it's like generic pretty boy rookie, and Batista is Reverend Devon's assistant, Deacon Batista. Yeah, like legit one of the 10 worst gimmicks of all time.
So like when you see people get called up from NXT now and it doesn't work and you're like, oh, they don't know how to call people up. They never did. They've never known how to do this.
Big Show is the U.S. champion. His belt is not on the line here. Big Show dominates both Cena and Angle early. They do a series of segments where one guy gets thrown out of the ring and the other two guys fight each other. They keep coming back to just Big Show's unstoppable. Like he just throws both guys around.
Which, I mean, if you're going to have Big Show in a match at this point, that's the only thing he's here to do.
Yeah. This was a kind of brief period of them pushing Big Show well, this couple months here. It could never last.
Like, I always argued that they should really only call Big Show, like, they just leave him in OVW until, like, March, and then call him up for the month before WrestleMania so he seems interesting.
And then you can put somebody over.
Yeah, and then he can just fuck off back to wherever he's been.
Cena and Angle team up to chop Big Show down, and then Cena hits the FU on Big Show, which they probably should have saved for WrestleMania.
Yeah, it's still a big deal at WrestleMania when he does it, but yeah, it's weird that they kind of blow that here. They blow their wad pretty quick.
Cena covers Show, but he gets his foot on the rope. Then an Angle slam on Big Show, only gets 2. Cena goes for the FU on Angle, but Angle rolls through into the ankle lock, which is so awesome.
Yeah, it's such a badass thing.
Kurt Angle insane ankle lock counters are one of my favorite things.
That's just my aesthetic. It's just like people countering things into submissions. That's my aesthetic.
Big Show hits a huge choke slam on Kurt, then one on Cena, but as Big Show covers Cena, Kurt gets him in the ankle lock. Show manages to roll through and power out of that. Angle manages to angle slam Big Show over the top rope. He then locks Cena in the ankle lock, and Cena taps out, and Angle wins. I believe this was the last submission loss of John Cena's career.
How wild is that? 15 years?
Yeah, I do not believe he has ever tapped out since this.
You know, on that topic, they mention in the main event that like Lesnar has tapped out before. And like I was trying to think of who he would have tapped out to.
It was an Angle tapped him out with the ankle lock.
Okay.
Benoit may have tapped him out with the crossface too.
But how wild is that they had Lesnar tap out at all? Like
yeah, they were just making his character that he was kind of an overrated bully. Like he talked real tough, but like if you actually got him in the ring, you could beat him.
Also, like submission wrestling was such a bigger deal during this like 2-year period than at any other time in WWE history. Just like everybody had a submission finisher. Everyone.
And I love that. I love guys having multiple finishers.
Fucking Brock had the Brock lock.
Yeah, that was weird.
Sick.
Now he's got the Kimura, but yeah, the Brock lock was awesome.
Or he took like Benoit's leg and just like curled it around his neck all the way.
Yeah. That, since we're on the topic, was an awesome match they had on SmackDown when Benoit challenged Lesnar for the title. And like, I worked myself into thinking Benoit was going to win it. I think I intentionally didn't read the spoilers that week.
Man, that would have been awesome.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't have been the right time, but I was really feeling it. And then, Brock got him in the Brock lock and he passed out.
God, what a great fucking moment that was, though.
Yeah, the 6 submission hold he's got him twisted up in.
I literally had that as like my desktop wallpaper for like 3 years.
All right, it's main event time. Brock Lesnar defends the WWE Championship against Eddie Guerrero. Brock comes out first. He does not have Heyman backing him up because I don't think Heyman was managing him at this point. Heyman was just the GM. They split. He
was still helping him, though. Like, it was still in the corner.
But, yeah, Brock Lesnar should never be without Paul Heyman.
Yep.
Eddie comes out second in the lowrider. Insane pop. What a great entrance.
God, and he's just – you can tell on his face that he knows he's winning the belt.
Yeah.
Because he's high-fiving everyone. He's glowing. He is, like, out of his mind happy in this moment.
They stare down in the ring. Lesnar's got to have 6 inches and, 60, 70 pounds on Eddie.
And Taz is doing some amazing work here. Because literally the whole time he's just like, Lesnar's bigger than him. He's faster than him. He's more agile than him. He's tougher than him. Like, there's nothing that Eddie has. Eddie can't win this match.
Eddie has heart.
And then, Michael goes like, but Eddie has heart. And Taz is just shitting all over it. Like, that doesn't matter.
Brock immediately overpowers Eddie, hits him with a power bomb, picks him up, and spins him around. I love the spiral bomb.
Yes. Just starts screaming at him like, you're nothing, Eddie.
Huge belly-to-belly suplex by Brock. And then he just keeps throwing Eddie out of the ring like a piece of trash.
God, and like these are... Like, he did those things at the time, but this is closer to the way that he wrestles now. Where, like, this match is just... He's just disassembling Eddie Guerrero with suplexes.
Yeah, this is like the power of Suplex City Brock, but without him being so lazy that he only does German suplexes.
Exactly. So, like, he's still doing those things in between also doing other stuff.
Yeah, he's actually, like, moving around and taking bumps. Eddie catches Brock with a hangman and then wraps his leg around the post a couple times. Brock retakes control and hits Ryback's shell shock on Eddie.
Not only does he hit the shell shock, like he does the march before.
Yes.
Like Ryback stole that move from this match.
Yeah, sounds right. A young Ryback was sitting around practicing the power of positivity or whatever the fuck he called that. And this is what he was inspired by.
I couldn't believe when I literally saw him do the march and everything.
Oh, as a side note, how awesome would Ryback versus Brock have been when they were pushing Ryback?
Oh, it would have been amazing, especially if Brock had just beaten him in 30 seconds.
Oh, Brock would have kicked the shit out of him.
Just ate him alive. Like, I'm the real deal, bro.
Yeah. Eddie keeps mounting offense, but Brock keeps shutting him down. It's a nasty German suplex from Brock where Eddie hit his head.
Yeah, it looks like Eddie forgot to jump or like their timing was off. So Brock just deadlifted him to his head.
That's just what's terrifying about Brock Lesnar is he can actually do wrestling moves to people without them helping him. He's that strong.
And so he doesn't really know that you're not going to help. So you're going over one way or the other. So he's putting in the same amount of effort on the suplex he always does. And if you don't get around, that's on you.
Yeah, like a normal person cannot German suplex an adult-sized person.
Without help, yeah.
Yeah, you're just not strong enough to do that. Brock Lesnar will just pop those hips and send you flying.
Yeah, every once in a while you'll see Brock just like deadlift somebody by accident, and you're like, oh my, that's something else.
Yeah, there's times he hurts people, and I don't feel like he's being reckless. I think he's just so strong it's impossible to control.
Well, yeah, because like literally, like if Steve Austin was trying to do that German suplex and like Eddie didn't jump, he just wouldn't be able to get him. So he just have to try again and they'd have to like get the timing down. Brock Lesnar does not have to worry about timing. When he's ready for you to go up, you go up. That's how it is.
Brock charges Eddie in the corner, going for a big knee, but Eddie ducks and Brock tumbles over the top rope to the floor. What an insane bump.
And how cool is his, like, if Brock Lesnar wanted to, he could easily do, like, Undertaker's flying jump over the top rope. Like, easily, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, like, that's basically what he does here, is he, like, jumps up into the air with a flying knee and just clears the top rope.
Brock can probably dunk a basketball.
Oh, God, yes.
And he's, I don't know, 6'3". He's not that tall.
Like, this dude...
Yeah.
Like, this is a bump he would never take in a million years today.
Oh, this is nuts. He's so good at selling his knee, too. This has been, like, a recurring thing throughout his career and, like, all of his matches. He hurts his knee, and he convinces you he's actually blown it out the way he sells it.
Yeah, and, like, Brock Lesnar, and I'm sorry if you don't like Brock Lesnar. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who are just like, oh, fuck him. He's never around. He only cares about money. I don't have any interest in that narrative or in entertaining it. Brock Lesnar is a genius in what he does, in his one specialized version of wrestling that he does. He could not do anything else but do the Brock Lesnar stuff, but he's a genius at this.
No, like, would you really want Brock Lesnar, like, selling and taking tons of bumps?
Right. But, like, the selling that he does do is amazing.
He's great at it.
Like, all through this match, he is in pain. He delivers suplexes. Like, he literally delivers a suplex during this match where his leg gives out during it, and he's, like, trying to kick feeling into it as he's doing the suplex.
I don't know how he does this, but he has this amazing ability to turn himself red when he's in a submission hold. Like, yeah, when Daniel Bryan would get him in the yes lock, and he would somehow just turn bright, bright red like he's passing out.
Yeah, I don't know if he's just, like, hyperventilating to make that happen, but it's so great. Like, he looks like he's going to die.
There's times I see him in the ring and I worry about him. He gets, like, so red and he's heaving so hard.
But then, like, by the end of the match, he gets up and he's like, well, fine. Like, everything looks... Like, somehow he has the ability to sell with his entire body like that, and I don't know how the fuck he's doing that. But also, he does all this small little stuff. Like, he, like, beats Eddie so bad, Eddie, like, falls against him, and he just, like, shoves him off.
Get out of here.
Or, like, there's a part in this match where, like, Eddie's going for submission after submission, and Brock's, like, he's not locking it on, and Brock's just shoving his ass off. But, like, he's not doing any moves. He's just, like, you can't do a submission move to Brock Lesnar. He's just going to push you away. It's just, you don't see other people do stuff like that. It's amazing.
Eddie follows up with a plancha to the floor. They get back in the ring. Eddie hits a back suplex, but Brock comes back with a hot shot. Eddie manages to trip up Brock and lock him in STF, and the crowd goes absolutely wild.
And, like, that's a tight STF, the first one he locks on.
Yeah, Cena should have taken some fucking notes on that. Brock sends Eddie flying with a belly-to-belly suplex, just absolutely sick.
Yeah, he goes. And, like, they're doing this thing where, like, Eddie will, like, wrap his arms around Brock's neck, and it clearly is just like, all right. And Brock will just fucking send him into space.
But Eddie comes back with a head scissor, then a drop kick to Brock's knee, and he locks Brock in the figure four. Love the submissions. Love the way he's wearing the beast down.
Well, also, like, even though Brock has wrestled Kurt Angle a number of times, this isn't really how Kurt Angle wrestles. It's just like non-stop chain submissions. And just like displaying that, like, this is how Eddie can win. Like, this is the way no one's tried to beat Brock Lesnar before. And it's great. I loved every second of it.
Brock gets out of the figure four. He once again shuts down Eddie, and he locks on a rear naked choke. Eddie gets out. He goes for the missile drop kick, but Brock ducks. Brock keeps yelling at Eddie to die. This is one of my favorite spots in any match, where the guy starts yelling at the other guy to stay down.
Well, like, the first time he yells it, like, they close up on his face, and his nose is busted wide open. And he's just got blood trickling down into his mouth. And he's just like got that like big-eyed weird Lesnar face that he gets. He's just like, die, Eddie, die. And it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. That's intense.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Eddie gets up, he hits Brock with another drop kick to the knee, then head scissors. Brock goes for a corner charge, but he misses and hits the turnbuckle. Eddie gets the three amigos, and the crowd is really starting to believe now.
I think I wish I could say that I truly believed that Eddie could win this. It wasn't until this point that I started to be like, oh, wait, what? Like, yeah. No, wait, what?
Eddie is feeling it, but Brock pops up, gets him up for the F5, hits it, but in the process, Eddie's legs kick the referee in the face. Ref is down, can't make the count. Brock has it won, but there's no referee. Brock goes to the floor and he gets the title belt. Looks like he's going to level Eddie, but now Goldberg shows up and he nails Brock with the spear.
Gigantic pop for Goldberg.
Yeah. Crowd goes insane. Eddie with the cover. The 1, 2. No, Brock got his shoulder up.
And at that moment, I was like, no, Lesnar's going to win. It's over.
Yeah, no. Sit down, Marks. But I love that Eddie doesn't win there. Yes. I love that he gets to win it on his own.
A very common complaint about this match was that, oh, Goldberg fucking ruined the finish and it wasn't clean. There is a clean finish to this match. Like, Goldberg interferes and whatever. And anyway, it doesn't fucking matter if it was clean. Like, it's not because of Goldberg that Eddie wins. Eddie still has to outsmart Lesnar.
They both struggle to their feet. The referee is still down. Eddie grabs the title belt. He swings it at Brock, but Brock ducks, gets him up on his shoulders for the F5. He's going to finish Eddie off. He spins him, pops the hips, but Eddie catches him in a headlock and nails him with a tornado DDT onto the belt.
And then he's perfectly positioned, and the entire crowd stands up together.
Holy shit, he's going to do it. Eddie goes to the top. He hits the frog splash. He crushes Lesnar's ribs, drives all the air out of his body, makes the cover. 1, 2, 3. He got him. Eddie Guerrero is the WWE World Champion.
And let me paint you a word picture of this moment, because all of us, they've communicated the story of Eddie Guerrero so much to us over these past couple of months. And we've watched Eddie Guerrero. Basically, everyone who's watching wrestling at that point had pretty much been watching during the Attitude Era. They'd been watching him for years, and they knew about all of his struggles and all of that stuff. And here in this moment, Eddie Guerrero has finally won the title and ascended. Eddie immediately rolls out of the ring and leaps into the crowd.
Yeah.
Where like 50 people try to hug him at the same time.
Yeah.
And like somebody tries to hand him like a replica belt. The security has to drag him out while he's just like grinning and laughing. He runs over to his mother, who's in the front row, and she's sobbing. and like he hugs her, and like one of his brothers is there and he gives him a big hug. Somebody throws him like a California flag and he stands up on the table and dances with it in the belt. Like, it is a perfect wrestling moment.
What a great celebration.
Like, it might be the best title celebration ever. It might be the best victory ever. It might be the best match ever. I can't pile enough superlatives on it.
What a perfect crystallization of that WWE main event style.
Like, this, when they talk about WWE main event style, this is what they're talking about. This is the template of work a body part, make everything matter. You're going to go long, do some near falls, a little bit of schmoz at the end. Beautiful moment. Like, this is the style.
What I've heard is what Vince thinks a great match is a roller coaster where you bring the crowd up and down and up and down. And like, this match was a perfect example of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like, just all the momentum swings. They worked the holds. They made it count. They sold. There was drama. There was psychology. They advanced the storylines coming out of this. It's perfect. It's perfect.
And at the moment where Eddie's on the ramp, on his knees, holding the belt up to the sky, is like, look, man, I've seen this match 50 times, easy. Like, I get chills every time. Like, there's nothing like this.
Yeah. I just love, right after he wins, they go to the wide shot and they turn the lights back on so you can see the crowd, and you just see people are hanging from the rafters. Like, it's absolute pandemonium in there.
And it's one of those moments where you see people in the crowd like hugging each other and jumping up and down and like, he did it.
It's like strangers are hugging each other.
I would have if I had been there. Holy shit.
What an amazing moment. Like,
and to have been there for that moment when your guy wins.
Unforgettable. Yeah. We won. Like, we, the wrestling fans, won here.
The only other moment close to that I can ever remember, other than like the moment where Benoit and Guerrero hug in the ring at the end of 20, is when Bryan wins at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
And everybody in the crowd is collectively like, we made this happen. Like, that's the only other thing.
Yeah. Like, there was no plan for Eddie Guerrero to become a world champion until the crowd adopted him and forced it.
And the best thing about that is, like, the smart crowd would eventually learn that it had the power to do this, and it would become kind of a corrupting influence. But this isn't that. No. This is casual fans and smart fans together deciding that this was the guy that we love, that deserves it. Before any of the "you deserve it" chants, before any of the like getting on Twitter and like bandwagoning a particular guy, before social media, before there was any way to organize that we all felt this way, Eddie had everyone in his pocket.
So unfortunately, we know this story does not have a happy ending. Eddie only carries the belt for a few months. He kind of cracks under the pressure of holding it. He ends up really just, begging them, take the title, please get the title off me. Like, he just couldn't take it. He's only alive for, a year and a half after this. He dies November 2005. Heart failure, combination of drug abuse, steroid abuse, and just, the physical pounding his body was taken. It was incredible that he made it to where he did, considering the things he had been through, but it was just, there was no way it was going to be able to last.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason we kind of consider it like the great tragedy of wrestling history. I mean, the fact that it will never be separated entirely from Benoit is very much a shame. Like, you can't pull those two things apart and those two people apart. And I do wonder how we'd remember Eddie if the Benoit thing hadn't happened, if that was just in a vacuum the most tragic event of that decade, Because when Eddie's episode of Raw after he died is the most emotional I felt about any, like, not just wrestling related. Like, that's one of the most emotional nights of my life. Like, I remember like breaking down watching it.
I've never watched it. I don't want to.
Like, there's that Hurt video package, the Johnny Cash Hurt one. is
Oh, man.
I can't watch it to this day. Like, I cannot do it. I've had a lot of favorite wrestlers. I've watched a lot of wrestling. I've never felt that way about a wrestler before, that he had stolen from him his redemption that he earned.
Yeah.
And it's a terribly, terribly sad story.
We loved Eddie Guerrero.
Yes.
Like in the very literal sense, even though most of us had never met him, we loved him.
Yeah. Fuck.
Yeah, no, it's just the epitome of life is not fair. Like, this guy got everything turned around, and he was living on borrowed time, unfortunately.
And like, and the fact that what happened to Benoit is so tied to his sense of loss of losing Eddie.
This was a rough couple years. Wrestling was never the same after this. It's never going to be again. This was really the loss of innocence for kind of fans of our age.
Yeah. In years to come, there are going to be so many wrestling fans who didn't go through this, who didn't go through Eddie, who didn't go through Benoit.
Just this run of it's insane. I mean, Kurt Hennig, Rick Rude, Big Boss Man, Davey Boy Smith. We could go for hours just listing wrestlers who died. It was every fucking week in this era. Somebody was dropping dead.
Yeah.
Like, it was a true crisis. And like, I think we've really gotten through it at this point, thankfully. Like, the wrestling business has cleaned up a lot since then.
It's what had to happen. It's very sad that people that we truly...
It was because of Eddie and Benoit.
Yeah.
Like, after Eddie, they implemented the wellness policy, and after Benoit, they actually gave it teeth.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. Like, this had to happen to save other people's lives, and I'm sure that Eddie would want that to be his legacy, but...
Yeah. I mean, that is a pretty good legacy on top of everything else he accomplished, that, like, he probably legitimately saved many, many people's lives.
Oh, yeah.
By, like, forcing WWE to get serious about drug testing, like, making them, for public relations reasons, but really for, it's noble of them that they'll send former wrestlers to rehab on their own dime. Like, that's saved many guys' lives. Like, I don't know that Jeff Jarrett would probably not be wrestling on Raw, might not even be alive without that.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Yeah. So thankfully we made it through this, but it was a bad couple years here.
Yeah. Like,
emotional highs and lows like we've never seen in wrestling.
Yeah,
like this and WrestleMania 20 are two of the really greatest moments ever in wrestling, but they're just, you can't watch them the same way now.
No. And like, every time we cover an Eddie show, I tell you in advance, like, this is going to fucking wreck me that we're doing this. Like, it never doesn't. Like, I watched the show and I cried tonight watching it. And like, that's how much this still affects me 15 years later.
Oh, man. So, yeah, I mean, that's what you get with Eddie Guerrero. You get the highs and the lows.
Yeah. There's never been somebody like him, and there never will be again.
No. Just impossible to imagine someone this talented who had this kind of life story.
Yeah. But, hey, on a better note, if none of that convinced you to go watch the last minute of this match, what are you doing?
Holy shit, go watch it. Come on.
Yeah, go watch that right now.
Oh, what are you still doing listening to us? Oh, but yeah, that's a wrap on No Way Out 04 and emotional roller coaster. A one match, like, other than the main event, who cares about the rest of this show? But God, what a main event. And, a fun, interesting kind of slice of time. We have not done any shows from around this era. So fun to cover this. And we'll definitely do some more 2004 shows this year, because there's a lot of interesting things that happened this year.
We've only just opened the lid on the whole decade of the thousands.
So yeah, next time, the march to WrestleMania begins anew as we cover one of the great WrestleManias of all time, WrestleMania 10. Two of the greatest matches in WWE history on this show. Whew.
Man, I was getting emotional at the end there.